Where's that Dale? Is he not with us?
He's got a job working. He won't be here tonight. Ready? Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to our October school board meeting. Call the roll, Mr. Basser.
Mr. Jewell.
Present.
Mrs. Lanehart.
Here.
Mr. Dunkman.
Here.
Mrs. McIntosh.
Here.
Mr. Moore. Absent.
At this time, I'd like to ask Shane Eastep to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hook so he can do the student and program recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell, members of the board. We've got a couple of groups here, but first up, I wanted to bring up Mrs. Dear Wester, principal at Rigsby.
Good evening. Does it test us? Okay. Good evening. Welcome parents, students, and of course our wonderful superintendent and board members and our treasurer. You can't forget about him, right? I do want to honor 3 students that they had a great honor. They got to go to Columbus last year and become a legislature for the day last school year. It was actually, I believe, the first Friday in June. It was an essay contest that Senator Lips put on for our area. And these 3 students actually made it to the state level. So they did win for Become a Legislator for a Day essay contest winners. Miss Allie Barnes, come on up, Allie. Okay. Miss Annie Steckel, legislator for a day. And Mr. Carson Fletcher. Come on down, Carson. Do you kids want to say anything? No, I think so. All right. Please give them a big round of applause. They definitely worked hard on their essays. Good job, guys. You can have a seat. This next award is very, very special. She's a teacher that's been here forever, way, way longer than me, and she did win the Air Force Association Aerospace Education Awards, not only the Dayton chapter, but she also won State Teacher of the Year. Miss Diane Johnson, come on up. And that is it. Thank you, board. Thank you, parents, for bringing them. I really appreciate it.
Going a little bit out of order, so just relax here for a moment. I'm going to have Mr. Oliver swing up this way. And without giving too much away, the Thunder had quite an amazing weekend. So
Yes, good evening. Saturday for our band, we qualified for state finals. We are the 7th band in Carlisle history to go to state finals. So we are pretty proud of that. It is our 2nd time going in 3 years. This year our goal is to be the 4th band ever to receive the highest rating in the state. That's our goal. We got a week and a half to get to it. We're working hard. Our kids are terrific. We've got great parents. Could not be more happy with our group. We got a really hard show this year, really modern. They just put their head down and work every single week. It's great to have those results come in. We were 33 members 5 years ago. We're 75 now, growing every day, getting better every day. Great staff, great parents, great kids. Could not ask for a better season. And we're not done yet. So we play November 10th at Welcome Stadium in Dayton, 7 o'clock showtime. once again, November 10th at UD, 7 o'clock, with awards are at 8:30. And we have Grand Nationals on November the 15th at noon in Indianapolis. So that's kind of our last 2 shows of the year, state and nationals. Hopefully we will do a great job and bring some more hardware home. Any questions?
You have a community show?
Yeah, we're doing a show for our community members November 11th in the stadium, kind of our last Monday night. We're going to do one last run through in full uniform for everybody that cannot come to our shows, whether it's work or financially. We're going to do one show out here, free admission, just do a quick run through for the parents. 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Yeah, 7 o'clock in the stadium.
On the 11th.
What day is that?
November the 11th. It's a Monday evening.
Okay.
Anything else? Cool, thank you. Our goal is to be the 4th band ever. That's our goal. Hopefully I'll be up here next month with some more good news for you guys. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. And congratulations on great effort up till now, but
More to come.
that's right. Okay, the work's not done yet. Good luck.
Thank you.
And now we're going to let Mr. Estep follow that.
Thanks a lot.
I don't have any awards or great accomplishments over the weekend, so bear with me here. I'd like to take just a brief opportunity to to update you on curriculum and what's been going on within the school district. We've adopted a new math program, K through 8, in our elementary grades called Eureka Math. We're seeing some great results on Eureka Math. We also have been given some new standards in regards to student health and mental wellness, the social and emotional learning standards. They were adopted by the state with Each Child, Our Future. So Governor DeWine has pledged over $500 million over the next 2 years to student wellness and mental health. Research demonstrates that students who receive support for social and emotional learning in schools do better academically, socially, and behaviorally. The social and emotional learning standards provide a continuum of development in 5 competencies. We're working on kids of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. The addition of the social and emotional learning standards provide a more holistic approach to educating the children of Carlisle. I think a lot of times people in our profession, we get too focused on state report cards. We get too focused on percentage of kids that have passed. We get too focused on letter grades. And I think it's very important for us not to forget that we're working with people and not widgets that we can work with and mold and make into a perfect end result. So we're working very hard to implement what's called PBIS in all of our schools, positive behavioral intervention supports. And all 4 principals have been working closely, the 2 at the secondary with their counselors, and then Ms. Deerwester and Mr. Milner, been working with the instructional leadership team to implement the social and emotional learning standards. So, are there any questions for me? No. It's been a great start to the year, and I thank you all for inviting me this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That kind of concludes my portion. So parents, certainly you're welcome to stay if you choose to. But if not, and you have
could
other
use this
things that
time
you
to
want to
sneak
do,
out.
this is the time. This is the time. Hint. Sneak out. Thank you. Congratulations. Don't worry, nobody's seeing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
May 3rd.
All right, I gotta get that out somehow.
Kelly.
Hey, John.
John.
When you tweet that out,
Yeah.
make sure you tweet out that to the community. I'll pick up and I'll retweet and I'll resend it out. Your thing for the community.
You got it.
Great. Okay, at this time is for our visitors' comments. We have any visitors that now is the time to come up? I guess not. I'll turn it over to our treasurer report. Mr. Basser, please.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. One non-action item, well, actually two non-action items. The first one is on your agenda. If you look back to the end, we're going to have a change in order. We're going to flip-flop 7 and 8. So the Board of Education report, Board of Education report will become number 7, and executive session will become number 8 prior to adjournment. So if you want to make note of that, flip-flopping 7 and 8. The next thing is non-action item is our capital conference coming up November 10 through 12. I gave packets to everybody this evening. All arrangements have been made. I texted a somewhat of an itinerary to everybody. Hopefully you got that. Our first meeting together as a group will be at 6:30 on Sunday evening. So depending on when everybody gets up there, we'll meet at the hotel about 6:15 and make sure that we can get to our place for our meeting as a group that evening. So that's on Sunday. And then we'll just go from there once we're all in Columbus. So if you have any questions about Capital Conference or any changes or anything, just get a hold of me, text me, call me, and we'll make sure that everybody's on the same page before that day. All right, my action items. I need approval for the minutes from last regularly scheduled meeting, which was September 23rd.
Need a motion? First by Mrs. Lainhart,
Second?
second by Mrs. McIntosh. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
and Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Next, financial report, which is part of your packet. One thing you may notice that's not on the agenda this month is October is typically the 5-year forecast month. Last year, that was a law change and has been moved to the month of November. So I don't know if anybody was on top of their game and didn't see the 5-year forecast in October, but it'll be coming, yes, next month in November. But other than that, financial report, no surprises, plodding right along. Outside of the general fund with the construction fund, writing checks with 2 commas in it is a little bit more intimidating than most of the checks that I write. But since the money's already there and we know it's there and it's set aside for that, it's not nearly as intimidating as trying to come up with that kind of money for sure. But all construction is up to date on pay. It's on budget. I don't want to steal Larry's thunder, but on time as well. And regular expenses are right on as we get ready to go from building to building. A lot of variables, a lot of unknowns, but we're going.
Need a motion?
So moved.
First by Mr. Dunkman,
Second?
second by Mrs. Lainhart. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
and Mrs. McIntosh.
Yes.
Next, I have a couple appropriation modifications, which I have 4 new funds to add. And if you look at those funds, the first one is basically the check that we got from Atrium to help with our athletic maintenance. What I decided to do was put that into our permanent improvement fund, but give it its own separate account. So if and when and if we start doing a capital campaign, that money won't get jumbled up anywhere else. It'll have its own separate account for the athletic maintenance of our fields and facilities. The second one, Drama Club, they're going to Disney. I had to up that amount. So that doesn't happen every year. That's an awesome thing for drama. They're going to be doing a lot of fundraising and have a lot more expenses this year, so that went a little higher. And the next 2, you'll actually see later that we're going to be spending that money on a person, some of this money on a person that we're going to be asking you to hire. But in years past, the federal government realized that they shorted us, all the districts in Ohio, some funds. So they're restoring those funds in special ed and in preschool. So it has to be its own separate. It can't go into this year's preschool or this year's special ed. So these are called restoration funds. Those were just added, and those are the exact dollar amounts of the funds that we're getting. We had to come up with a budget on how to do that with Mr. Hook, myself, and Mrs. Perkins, Special Ed Director. So we have those budgets put into place, have a plan, but we'll need approval a little bit later for personnel on one or two of them. So those are the modifications.
Need a motion? First by Mr. Dunkman, second by Mrs. Lanehart, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Call a roll, please.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart?
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
And then finally, we have a donation to the Drama Club because their expenses are going to be higher this year than before. But we need approval for the donation.
Need a motion?
So moved.
First by Mrs. McIntosh,
Second.
second by Mrs. Lanehart. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart?
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
That is my report for the month. Thank you very much.
Well, now it's time for Mr. Hook and our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. Just a real quick update. It is going, from week to week, the difference is really, truly amazing. We almost have this thing under roof. I mean, the last sections are the auxiliary gym towards the back, and if you've seen that, that's almost up to the rafter now. So we still have to pour the elementary slab for the commons area because that's the last thing, because they had to use that. They had to get that big crane in there to drop the steel in for the auditorium. So they had to be able to get close enough to do that. So it is a massive structure, and you won't know how massive until you see, unless you're standing in the back looking at it, or if you wait till when the high school goes down, you'll realize just how big that thing is. It is a pretty massive structure, but they are moving quickly. And like I said, when this is done, there'll be over 1.5 million cinder blocks in that facility, not counting the bricks. They did deliver bricks last week, which was kind of nice. They'll start that at some point here on the back side. I think they're going to start in the back first, but those masons will just continue to lay brick at different places. They'll just keep going around the building. They are, I think, I may have sent out a note to you, a weekly update that they are drywalling in the high school as well as in the elementary. So that's really, things are changing. It just physically changes when all that starts taking place. So it's going along very, very well. Again, like Dan had mentioned, my two favorite comments are on budget and on time. So they know my two, and they're doing a great job. We've got some good construction people working very, very hard on that. As far as the second item here is Business Advisory Council, I put in your packet the flyers. It's actually the document that we are sending to the state. We chose to become a part of the Business Advisory Council with Montgomery County ESC. Tammy kind of serves as that liaison. Been a lot of work by a lot of people, and you can see in the document the number of schools that are involved, and you'll see most of Warren County's involved with that as well. And the biggest reason is, where's the industry? Where is that? And it's predominantly north, or if you get far, go into Cincinnati. But for us and for our school, it makes sense to jump into that consortium. You know, this is an opportunity that'll help a lot of our students that may choose not to go to college or may choose to go directly into the workforce in some type of cooperative where those businesses will actually pay for their their college. So we're seeing a dynamic change in Ohio because we're losing our workforce and we want to gain it back. We want to keep it. I think that's part of the health of our economy statewide. So you're seeing this really ramp up out of Columbus, and we probably have the blueprint in the state of Ohio right now for a business advisory council. And just if you have a chance and you want a little reading material and you can't sleep or something like that, take a look at this. But there is a lot of work. We meet weekly, different parts of these different groups, and it's impressive the amount of work that's been going on in this area. So that's what that is, and I wanted to bring you up to speed where we're at, and the state's very happy with where we're going. Okay. Moving into my action items under general business, kind of touching bases with and piggyback on what Dan was talking about. Need approval for item A, which is Susan Klein being a consultant not to exceed the 21.5 days. This is paid through grants, it's not through our general fund. Okay, so when if that money goes away, that position does too. It's not gonna continue to stay. If we need it, we'll make those decisions at that point in time. Item B is met with Chad and Dan. We felt like we had an issue with trip pay for our bus drivers just being able to be competitive in our region. And we're not changing the normal pay for our bus drivers, but trip pay is that amount that they get for taking a trip, driving a field trip. You know, they're not may not be constantly driving. That's why a lot of schools it's a different rate. But our rate was significantly lower, and so we just wanted to put us into the ballpark with those schools that are directly adjacent to us. So we kind of just felt that $16 an hour for that trip pay did the trick for us, at least. Okay, we have to be able to provide those, that for our students. Also in C, D, and E, these are additional positions. These will come out of our general fund, but these are positions that are really being dictated by our special needs population. When we start, it's just we live in a different time in terms of the type and severity of the kids that we serve. And so sometimes we don't have the capacity to be able to educate in the least restrictive environment here, and we have to, get another facility through a purchase service, but we have to provide those transportations, and that's what this one is about. So I'll need approval for those as well. So overall, I need your approval for items A through E on item 1, section 1 rather.
I need a motion. So moved. First by Mr. Duckman. Need a second?
Second.
By Mrs. Lanehart. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Item section 2, item A, I need approval for classified resignation listed below.
Need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. McIntosh.
Second.
Second by Mr. Duckman. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart?
Yes.
Item 3, under classified employment, need approval for items A through C as listed.
Need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. McIntosh. Second
Second.
by Mrs. Lanehart. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman.
Yes.
Section 4, under supplemental resignations, I need the approval of those listed in A through D.
Need a motion?
So moved.
First by Mrs. Lainhart,
Second.
by Mrs. McIntosh. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman.
Yes.
Under Section 5, under supplemental employment, I'll pull Darren out here just to vote separately here. Item A, need approval for,
She's probably voting no.
she goes, I want to vote.
Need a motion?
So moved.
First by Mrs. Lainhart.
Second.
Second by Mr. Dunkman. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh.
Staying.
You can have some fun with this if you choose
I
to.
could. Like I said, don't tempt me. Give me another month and then we can revote.
Okay, now I need approval for the remainder of the supplemental employments, which include items A through M as listed.
I have a question.
Yep.
Has everyone been cleared from backgrounds and references and everything like that?
References, yes, clear, they don't coach until we get all the stuff, everything.
I need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mr. Dunkman,
Second.
by Mrs. Mrs. McIntosh. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
and Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
That concludes my section.
Well, anything going on with the Board of Education legislations, and he's not here? CTC?
Yes, the CTC met on October 8th at 7 PM, and it was regular session.
Any old business? Any new business? I need a motion to go in executive session with, for purpose of personnel with no action to take.
So moved.
First by Mr. Dunkman,
Second. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go. Mrs. Lainhart.
second by Mrs. Lainhart. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Time in is 6:28.
Thank you for coming.